Hey everyone, it's Kale from Scud Style, and today I'm going to be bringing a video about language learning. Specifically, 3 tips that I've learned to help to learn a second language. So, I am an English speaker, native English speaker, born in the United States, and I also speak Spanish. I studied it in school for a while and Spanish ended up being one of my majors in college, and I studied abroad for 5 months in Spain. I also lived for a little while in the Dominican Republic, and I've traveled elsewhere in the Spanish-speaking world and also in some very heavily Spanish-speaking communities within the United States. And these are just a few of the tips that I've kind of noticed while learning the language. So, tip number 1, I would say, is vocabulary is the most important thing to learn if you want to communicate effectively. So there's something to be said about having perfect grammar and sounding exactly like a native and this and that, and while those are obviously important aspects of learning a language, they're not the most important for being understood, especially when you have to sacrifice one for the other, or you don't have time to learn all 3. So in this case, vocabulary is what trumps everything, and that's where the schooling that I came up with actually helped the most in this regard. I learned a lot of vocab in the classes I took. Now, actually being able to apply those vocabulary lists and everything like that into interactive and spontaneous speech is a little bit different, and obviously having some fluidity and some comfort speaking and how you sound and things like that help. But at the end of the day, if you can't express what you're talking about because you don't know the words, even if your verb tense is incorrect, even if your accent isn't perfect, if you have a passable accent and a passable grammatical structure and semantic structure, then if you have the correct vocabulary, you're going to be understood most of the time. Can't be said if you have perfect accent, but can't, because in our own language, if we can't think of the word we're trying to say, people aren't going to understand you. So my number 1 tip then would be to learn the vocabulary. And there have been many people who suggest, and I am a big fan of this, learn it from not just, if you're going to be using specialized vocabulary for a certain reason, that's great, you can learn the specialized lists. But I recommend, whatever language you're trying to learn, look at the words that are used most frequently in that language. And you can get a hold of these lists online. There are certain dictionaries that are geared towards frequency rather than just basics. And learn the ones that are used the most commonly first. You know, it's just being more efficient and more smart about the way you're learning vocabulary. That's my recommendation, is vocabulary first. Another thing that really, once I was able to actually learn the vocabulary, the thing that really took off from being able to write and read Spanish to be able to actually speak it, for me, was being in an immersive environment. And then, now this isn't always easy for everyone. If you're learning Spanish at home or this and that, you can try to get a language partner, you can try to interact via the internet, and there are a lot of these sites out there, and there's a lot of opportunity out there now to be able to find someone who's trying to learn your language and you're trying to learn theirs, to connect remotely and to have a conversation. And so, but the best way would be to go to a place that speaks that language and go without any other speakers that speak your language. The reason being is that when I was abroad, that was when my Spanish took off from, and I was a good Spanish student, you know, I did well, but when I left to actually start living in Spain, my Spanish was not very good. I could not use it very practically because I was self-conscious of me not being able to string sentences together with a good cadence, with a good rhythm, with any kind of fluidity. I could get one sentence out and then couldn't segue that to another sentence or another independent thought, things like that. The best way to really get thrown into that is it's kind of the sink or swim, to not really have English outs. Because that will all come through practice, through trial and error, through kind of forcing your brain to adapt a little bit and think in that language almost exclusively for a while. What happens is, for instance, in my study abroad program, I went abroad with 30 other American students that I did not know. Instead of hanging out with them, I put myself into situations where I would meet Spaniards. I met the Spaniards, and sometimes they would want to speak English, but most of the time that would be very, very short, and we would speak Spanish the entire time. If I got frustrated, if I got this or that, there was nothing to save me. The woman I lived with spoke not one word of English. These are the types of things that really forced me to not cop out and be like, oh, my brain hurts, I'm tired of speaking Spanish, this and that. Because that tiredness is what's creating that kind of elasticity for your brain, which is kind of developing that new second language really quickly and really powerfully. So don't give up on that. And it's just too easy when you're surrounded by friends who speak your native language and you start to be like, oh, how do you say this? Or how do you say that? Or you start to talk about other things real quick because you're so frustrated about the fact that you can't get out what you want to say. So being immersive in an opportunity where you don't have the ability to not speak in the language you're trying to learn is very helpful. Almost all of the students who went on that trip with me, their Spanish did not improve very much, and I don't mean to say that in a way that I learn more than them or this and that because of any kind of superiority. It's just, it's a matter of comfort zone. And I was very good at taking myself out of my comfort zone, throwing myself into an immersive environment and doing it. They mostly hung out with one another because that's what they were comfortable with. And they had a very great experience, but they didn't learn Spanish to the degree that they could have. Some of them definitely did, but the majority, when I was talking to them, would remark, oh, I'm not really learning Spanish very much. And for me, it was apparent that that was why, after speaking with them about it. And finally, with language learning, my third tip is to listen to music in the language that you are trying to learn. The other thing you can do besides music are things like podcasts, things like TV with subtitles. Even better if you can do subtitles in their language while listening to it in their language once you get to that kind of degree. Being able to listen to the language and be able to repeat it and then look up translations or being able to do the translations yourself and then kind of hearing it over and over and over again, music is something that almost everyone really enjoys. So find music that you like to listen to that's in that language, and kind of even if you're just listening to it in the background, I recommend find a few songs that you really like, look up their lyrics, see if you can translate them the best you can, and then you'll get once you learn those lyrics and you're able to kind of sing along to it, you not only get cadence and fluidity down a little bit just from practicing that, but you're also getting some ready-made, grammatically correct phrases, vocabulary, idioms, things that are really cool to be able to slip into speech, and I've noticed that helps me a lot. And I really like a lot of the music that I've been introduced in Spain and otherwise, so I really highly recommend that. So those would be the three main tips I would say that would really help for anyone who's interested in learning a second language. Those are things that have helped me in my experience the most. And thank you very much for watching, and I hope everyone has a great day.